Hey everybody, Jim here. I'm going to be talking about Falling Skies Season 3, Episode 4, titled At All Costs this week. Hated this episode. Absolutely hated it. I thought it was boring. Characters are making crazy decisions left and right. The show in general, maybe this is it, maybe I'm just starting to notice this, but this show is about as subtle as a marching band going through your backyard. This show cannot do subtle. They can't lay off the music. I mean, I have heard less score in 2.5-hour movies than I see in every week of this episode, or of this show. That really bothers me. Coming off of shows, like I've said before, that don't use it, and how effective and powerful they are without it. Sorry, music does not fix a bad show. And as far as I'm concerned, this is turning into a bad show unless they make some changes. First off, let's start with Hal as the mole. I was wrong. Hal is apparently the mole, if we're to believe what we saw on the screen today. I don't know. I didn't see it coming, but not in a good way. I didn't see it coming in the way where I thought it couldn't be possible because it'd be stupid. And lo and behold, I was right, it was stupid. So he's the mole, and he's breaking mirrors. One thing that I gotta say for Hal is Hal the mole is having way better sex than Hal the nice guy ever had. I can guarantee that. Maggie's probably gonna miss that when they fix this whole mole thing. Going along with the subtlety stuff, Hal the mole, not subtle. His performance in that scene with the mirror is over the top. It is cliched. I've never seen this guy in anything else, so I don't know if that's just him, if that's bad writing, if that's bad direction. I couldn't tell you, but I didn't like it. We could talk about the meeting with the president a little bit, because that goes back into the subtlety stuff. That speech with Cochise when he's in the chair and they're like, "Why are you helping the humans?" And he gives a speech about a flower and some Starship Enterprise data banks that... generation ships, by the way. That's kind of cool. So, big plus for this episode. They have a mention of a generation ship. No, but that was so over the top. It's like, really? A perhaps heartfelt speech from an alien being is going to sway the mind of the president when the lives, as he points out, of every single human on the planet are at stake? That's going to sway him? I don't get it. I don't get it. Why does he trust anything coming out of the mouth of that? Why? I can see why Hal does, because they've done all these great things for him. I mean, maybe Hal, like I said last week, is the proxy that they need to make the president trust them, and then in turn trust the aliens. But I didn't feel like they gave Hal a chance. He basically said, "I'm just going to leave it to Cochise to tell you everything. Like, trust me, but go talk to Cochise. I don't want to explain all this." That didn't work for me. So the alien does have, or the baby does have alien DNA. No surprise there. We still don't know how he got it, or how she got it. It's the machine, right? I mean, unless there's been some weird, like, Hal-like nighttime activities with Anne as well, it's got to be that machine. That's the only alien contact she or that baby have had. Maybe there's something else left in Tom that, you know, into Anne. That's a possibility too, I guess. I don't know. I thought it was absolutely batshit insane that she clubbed Dr. Kadar over the head and ran off into the woods with the baby. That's kind of crazy. I suppose she did that because Tom was not there to sort things out at this point. And had Dr. Kadar done what he said he was going to do and tell somebody about it, they may have overreacted. tried to take the baby from her, tried to kill the baby. Who knows? I mean, it could be an angry mob situation. So maybe that influenced it, and maybe that influences why. Maybe that goes back to why Hal is not talking to anybody, and why he snaps. I don't understand why he snaps after he finds out that his father is not there. That doesn't seem like a snap-worthy thing. He could have just waited a couple days. But yeah, I don't know. He snaps. And so does Anne, apparently, because she goes running off into the woods and finds Hal out there as well. Let's talk about Dr. Kadar. Another over-the-top ridiculous thing is, of course, he has had his children somehow lost. Probably in the attacks, probably horrifically, definitely in front of his eyes. Either that or he spent too much time with House in the pediatrics wing. But I'm pretty sure he had kids at some point, and he watched them die. That is not an overly dramatic thing. It's the way that they portrayed it. He's this borderline crazy guy, and now we kind of understand why, right? I mean, watch your kids die in front of you, that's probably pretty bad, I'd imagine. But he doesn't want to talk about it, and Anne refuses to even really acknowledge that he's going through something there. And you would think as the doctor she might have a hand in, you know, trying to psychologically help people out as well, not just physically. But no, she's dealing with her own shit at the same time. But it just felt over the top. At first he's like, oh, they're so innocent, and then he cuts himself off, and then he's like, oh, there's nothing worse than the silence after, and then he cuts himself off again. It just felt over the top, and with the music in the background hitting me with all this stupid shit at the same time. Ugh. I didn't like it. Maybe you guys felt totally different about it. If you did, send me an email, because I would like a defense of this episode. There was not much in it that I liked. So we meet the president, and obviously I knew that the sniper was telling the truth about the president. That seemed like a no-brainer. Not a problem. Like I said, the president immediately trusts Tom. Or not even Tom. Trust the alien. Fine. Pope's doing his thing. I don't know what Pope's doing out there. I mean, other than wanting to be with that plane, he probably came along to get some information, scope out some good places to hide out if he ever needs to, you know? Hopefully he was watching the ground on the way in, because that's where they are now. Then there's another plot thread with Ben and his girlfriend giving up their powers. Did they or didn't they? I don't know. It's kind of unclear at the end. So they're both wearing glasses at the end. We know that his girlfriend wore glasses before, and that he needed an inhaler, and all sorts of normal human flaws that no longer applied once they became harnessed. So at the end, she has glasses on, he has glasses on, which he didn't wear glasses before. So is this a joke between them? Is this the show trying to say, hey, they gave up their powers? Which one is it? I don't really know. And it's obvious we're not supposed to know at this point. I think. If that's not obvious, if we're supposed to understand something from that scene, it was poorly conveyed. I don't know. And that whole plot line was poorly executed, in my opinion. At the beginning, they're very much for giving up their powers. They're like, we don't want to be freaks. We don't want to live to only 20 years old. We want to get rid of these things. Somewhere in the middle, they change their mind for no reason. For no fucking reason. I mean, Ben talks with his brother for like 3 seconds, and he's like, keep them then. No problem, keep them then. There's nothing driving the decision to keep his powers. I mean, you could tell at the beginning that he's reluctant to give them up, but apparently the power of the Poon is stronger than the powers of the aliens, because he eventually changes his mind and goes in for the operation. I at least shows up for the operation. Whether he has it or not is another story. But there was nothing driving that decision to change his mind. I mean, that girl didn't even really try to convince him to keep his powers. I mean, she showed up and it was, surprise, I'm not getting the operation. And then all of a sudden everything was good. What made her change her mind? Was it just seeing the fact that he was reluctant to give up his and she didn't want to kind of force him into that? I don't know. It was very unclear. I feel like it would have been much stronger if they had been adamant about their decision to give up those powers, and then somewhere along the road in this episode, they realize something happens to where they need those powers and they use those powers, and they realize we need these powers to help these people. And it's almost like a sacrifice, you know? Which is something they mention in the show. It's a sacrifice to keep these powers because we're not going to live as long, but we can do a lot of good with them. I think it would have been way more interesting to have something plot-wise drive that decision. They didn't do it. Michael Hogan. Michael Hogan is in this show now. It's freaking awesome. He was in full Battlestar mode, too. As soon as Kochi steps off that plane, he's like, what the hell is this? So good. So good. I love Michael Hogan. I'm just waiting for him to get an eye patch. That's all. That's pretty much all I wanted to say about this episode. I didn't like it. I hope they get a lot of these things straight. It's part one of a two-part lineup. Next week is going to be the continuation of it. So we'll see what happens. I don't really like the way it started. I hope they can end it better than they started it. But it's hard to undo a lot of the things that they did. I hear, actually, that the reason they had Anne run off into the woods, kind of leave the group, is because she was pregnant throughout the filming of this, and they needed to get her off the set for a while and write her out. So I guess that's a way to do it. Whatever, I don't really know. But I didn't like it. Didn't like any of it. So I hope you guys will write into me if you have differing opinions. I know some of you do. I know at least one of you does because he wrote in. Michael R. wrote in and he said, seems like you were right about the mole not being Hal. It's his alter ego, Evil Hal. Right? This feels very much like a cop-out from the writers. They missed an opportunity for an interesting storyline on how someone would turn against their own. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. I mean, we know how he turned against his own. He's being mind-controlled, right? So there isn't really that tension of maybe he thinks he's doing something for the greater good, or he's being coerced for selfish reasons. He's literally being mind-controlled. There's nothing he can do about it, which makes it very uninteresting. Very uninteresting. He goes on to say, I'm not sure what Anne was thinking by wandering off into the wild with a newborn baby. This is supposed to be her motherly protective instincts kicking in, but someone as smart as her should see how futile that is. How did she expect to survive on her own? You are correct, Michael. You are correct. And finally, he says, I have to mention another pet peeve of mine, and that's DNA testing on TV. Rubbing alcohol, dish detergent, and salt are all you need for a DNA profile in a few hours. They're not even trying to make it realistic. I couldn't agree with his sentiment more. I hope it gets better for both my sake and Michael's sake. And that's all I have to say. So thanks everybody for listening and watching. Jeez, I'm not used to saying that. Next week, I'll be back as usual, probably with some more bad news on this show. We'll see. We'll see. I really want to like it. I really do. But they're making it so difficult.